to another episode of Tuesday Time Bank. In this week, I will be talking about the drastic change that was going on from fashion of the 1930s to the fashion of the 1940s. And in this pattern, this one happens to be from the 1940s, and it's an excellent Tuesday Time Bank of seeing what the fashion was like for girls and ladies of that era. So let's give this a few more seconds for more people to join on our live stream, and we'll get started. So for those that are already here, thank you so much for joining. And also for those that are coming in after the live stream, which is what's so great about doing live streams. So I have been doing 1930 patterns review of looking at the pattern and the style, looking at the design and the tissue paper. But this is going to be a little bit different. We're doing the transition from the 1930s into the 1940s. I don't have that many 1940 patterns only because I don't like them, but I do have a few to use them in today's topic. So as you can see, there is a great difference. And I'm going to bring another 1930s pattern right here. This is an official vintage 1930s pattern, the way that they looked. And I want you to take notice of the colors and style. And the fabrics used in the 1930s was very beautiful, romantic. They were chiffon silks, violet, which is a scarf type material. It's a very sheer cotton, and rayon even. So all types of beautiful cotton flowy fabrics. And you can see by this one right here. This one is still beautiful, as you can see. This one right here was very romanticized for little girls in the 1930s. This is a pillow or a sack style dress, which is very simple. And you can see on the shoulders that it is see-through. So that was very beautiful. And the embroidery that was being done. The fabric in the bottom was intended to be the same as the top. And as you can see there, it's very sheer. In comparison to the 1940s, we see that women were starting to wear suit style clothing. And it'll be fun after the video here if you can go ahead and start looking at the 1940s fashion so that you can see for yourself. Women were all wearing suit style fashion. And like I mentioned earlier in the video, I don't have that many because I don't like it. But I do have enough to be able to show today. So in the meantime that I'm going to be going in the Tuesday Time Bank, which is items of a time capsule, which is this right here. We get to see actual vintage patterns of the day. And here is another one, which is not in good condition, but I brought it so that you can see. Note the colors that were being used, even though this is a little bit plaid over here on the side and some blues, but there was still floral and colors of pink and very feminine and beautiful along with the fabric. So what happened from the 1930s to the 1940s? Well, what happened is in the 1940s, as we all know, we were in the midst of World War II. And this is another 1930s. Very frilly, feminine, very flowy fabrics and fashion. So we were in the midst of World War II, and what happened during that time was that there was a shortage of fabric. And As we can imagine, there was a shortage of manpower. The men were serving at the war, those that did get to go, and the women were taking the place of men in the workforce, some of the workforce, not all of it. So while that was happening, excuse me, the women were appearing to be having clothing as suits. And here is one transition of the late 1930s into the 40s right here. And I'll go into depth in detail of this fashion next week. So just wanted to give you a little show and tell there. So as the women were taking jobs and the fabric was becoming a little bit more scarce, what was going on is that they were using the fabrics that were left over for the men's suits. So that's why you get to see darker colors and men's style. And the reason why they did these suits as a style, women were taking jobs and they wanted them to be more presentable at the job. So suits were being made, and the same was happening for the little girls, as you see here. Also, in the 1940s, as we see right here, the brand Hollywood Patterns was also taking a more dark approach, but they also wanted to keep the feminine look. So this is an actual pattern of Hollywood, and this pattern brand was using at times they were using faces or designed to some of the Hollywood stars of the moment. And those stars were also being used as models in commercials, magazines, and I don't happen to have a pattern with the picture of a movie star. Let's say if this was one in the 1960s, they would have a picture of Elvis as an example. So Hollywood Patterns took a little different approach. They had to use darker fabrics as well, but they wanted to keep their patterns still feminine and going into the suit style. So this looks like a suit right here, but it actually happens to be a dress suit. So it's a one piece, and it has tassels to give it a little bit more of a frill. It has the feminine lines on the side, and especially right here by the waistline. Still beautiful, still feminine, but they were doing a little bit of a soft transition into the 1940s. So very drastic change to the 1930s, very feminine look. And the main two reasons was there was not enough fabric. So the dresses were being made of tailored suit material and suit style. So what do you think? What do you think of this look right here? You can see that women of the day were now wearing suits, and they were also wearing trousers. Trousers. So the trousers was an intro back in the mid 40s. So that's very interesting. In the 1950s, it took a little bit of a halt, but definitely in between the 1950s to 60s, trousers was something that was being worn more for women. So very interesting facts to know what a war does to fashion. And mainly because of the scarcity of the fabric, scarcity of the manpower. And in that, if you look up, there's a lot of information of what was going on with the need of metals and so on and so forth. So this is a little brief mention of why we have such a drastic change of fashion from one era to the other. So in next week, I will be bringing more patterns. And as the week goes, I will be going in depth to see the patterns of the time. For this one right here, we go into a very quick change in the 1940s. In the 1940s, the patterns came in such a way that they were being cut. So from the 1930s, the patterns were blue tissue, and then later on, the patterns started coming out as, let me see if I can show you this one right here. They were coming out blank, completely blank, and that was because of the scarcity as well from the 1940s. So no more color in the pattern. Instead, they were punching out holes. So that is a very drastic difference from the 1930s to the 1940s. They were saving resources in everything. So this is what women would get in their patterns. Just a blank pattern, as you see right here, and holes. And the holes had kind of a symbol. That is probably number 6. Let's fold it this way, is what I am assuming. And you know what they say about assuming. So that is probably number 6 right there. But nonetheless, there's different holes everywhere else. So I'm going to fold this back because I do have a few patterns open. And I'm sure that women of the day had to have extreme care for their patterns to put them back, because there is no number. There is no other information other than the holes that you see here. So I'm going to take this brief moment and put it back. Get my mind off of not having them all together. So interesting facts, interesting eras. Just a moment of, I'm not going to say chaos, but you know, we all have our words to describe. So here is a pattern of the 1930s. Why is a pattern in the 1930s blue? So they were also saving resources, but not as much as they would in a decade later. The reason why we have blue is because it takes a lot of ink to make black. So they were still saving resources in the Great Depression of the 1930s, but not enough as the 1940s that you have such a drastic change in pattern from blue to nothing. So I hope you like this little review of 1930s to 1940s patterns. Definitely something to behold, how the ladies had to go from very beautiful post 1920s, which was amazing fashion, to the beautiful frilly and delicate fabrics of the 1930s, to dark colors and suited clothing in the 1940s. So now I would ask, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up, a comment, and a share. Shares are helping my channel grow. It's also helping other viewers find my content, and it's also helping me as well. So I hope that you like this little mini review of what was going on in these 2 decades. Thank you so much for joining. We'll see you next week on the next Tuesday Time Bank. And if you're here, take a look at the rest of my playlist. There's a lot more than Tuesday Time Bank, Sewing for Dolls, and my pets. Have a great week, everybody. We'll be showing more patterns next week. Bye, everybody.